I cried in an email. Okay. Intro. Sorry, I'm tired. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Triad where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Hannah.
Okay.
Hannah?
I said I'm Hannah.
Okay, I didn't hear
you must have cut out.
You cut out right when you said it.
I'm
Of
me.
course.
Okay, do we have any announcements?
I have a snow day, woohoo,
Yay!
which I spent
Yay!
doing work.
Still.
Anyway,
But at least you didn't have to be at work.
at least
Yeah.
I didn't have to be either covered in blood and or pee, so...
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's slightly better.
I was just happy I didn't have to, leave my house. Because, I worked from home today, too. It was nice.
Yeah, I don't know if I could actually get to my car right now.
Yeah, my car is... Oh, yeah. I mean,
My car's
kind
iced
of
in.
goes with it. We had a snowstorm, along with, most of the rest of the middle of the country.
At least we're getting
In the
your
east. Yeah, they're getting the tail end of
you're
it.
getting it as well, but yeah.
How much snow do you think we have? Like a foot?
Yeah, probably about
Yeah.
a foot.
Like a foot. Some of the drifts are up to my hips now. So
Yeah.
that's fun. To be fair, my hips aren't very high up off the
I was
ground.
gonna say, so a foot and a half.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so technically, I guess I had 2 snow days. It was...
Which that was a deal in and of
stupid.
itself, trying to get those, but...
Yeah. Look, it's fine. Capitalism is the death of everything. It's
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
That's all we gotta say about that. Everyone
Yeah.
knows I hate my job. It's
Yep.
fine.
Yep. Yeah. Mine just, I don't want to, get into it, but I had a week, starting on
girl.
Monday. I have a week. We're just gonna leave it at that, just because there's a lot going on that I don't have full answers for, so I don't want to, discuss it, because,
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, so I don't want to be, speculating or anything. But yeah, I had a week, starting on Monday. And then we
Yeah.
had a snowstorm, and...
Yeah,
Do I
it's
know
just
about
been a
this?
lot.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just...
I'm gonna go through our text messages.
Here, I'll message you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, there's just a lot going on that I don't... Yeah. Anyway, so with that, my brain has not been,
right. I'm so sorry, right? I forgot.
Yeah. No, you're fine. So with that, my brain has, as you can tell, because I, can't finish a fucking sentence, and I keep losing my words, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
So, if we're done with announcements, I was originally going to do NFTs, because they fascinate me, but my brain cannot handle that. And then I was also going to cover Blackbeard, which was my original plan before NFTs. But then, I did some research for Blackbeard, and I was like, there's 28 rabbit holes that I want to go down, and this is just going to end up being insanely long, and my brain just can't function with that either. So I went on Reddit and was just looking around different subreddits, and then I landed on one that it's Victorian nonsense. It's something we all know already.
Yes.
And it's easy. So if you want to go, it's in the episode 84 folder. I have a PowerPoint and notes. And my notes
Yes! Oh my god, I have so much to say about this.
Yes. Also, and my notes are only 10 pages this time. So
Yes.
there's actually time for you to say things.
Yeah, we're always down for some Victorian nonsense in this household.
So we're talking about spiritualism.
I'm just looking at my bookshelf, which author could I pull to talk exclusively about them and spiritualism?
Yeah.
Some good stuff.
I really like my Instagram slide thingy.
I love it.
You should,
It's so cute.
I do too, but you should make the text at the bottom black or gray.
I wanted to leave it white on purpose because I don't really care, but
Shannon.
I liked it white. But yeah, so we're talking about spiritualism, which, in case you couldn't already tell, I mean, we've kind of like alluded to it before, but we've never like actually gotten into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've probably like, I know we've alluded to it and we've probably like had minor discussions about it, but we've never like
talked about
had an episode about it, you know?
Yeah, which I even checked to be like, we haven't talked about this, right? Just because we do talk about like
Not
adjacent
exclusively.
topics so often.
Yeah.
But we have not, at least not on the podcast. I'm sure we all have, you know, with each other, just not on the podcast. Okay, so my sources are multiple Wikipedia articles, as always. Crap, I meant to write this down. A study, I turned off my mouse, so that's not going to work. A study from, sorry, I forgot to write down what institution they're at. Oh, it's from the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion. It's a 2010 article. We get into it later. I have something from the Atlantic, Art Store, History Is Now magazine, Victorian Web. Why do I have something from the Austin, Texas government website? I don't think I actually cited to this. Oh, I did! It's from a museum in Austin, Texas. I forgot. And then I have something from the San Diego Union Tribune, the Smithsonian Mag, and the New Yorker. So, basically, just that we have like this very, one sentence foundation before we move on. Spiritualism was a religious movement and social movement from the 1830s up through like the 1840s up through like the 1930s, kind of. So the beliefs, we're gonna do the beliefs, and then like the history / like why it was popular as it was, and then we're gonna get into some other stuff too. So first off, the beliefs, like probably like the core belief is that like spirits. Like, after someone passes away, their spirit continues to live on, right? Which, like, that's obviously, like, a very religious thought. But they live in a specific... Sorry, something behind me just fell. That's great.
Oh, no.
They live, like, on a higher plane than our own. And they were available to speak with. We just have to find the right way of doing it. And so it's possible to communicate with the spirits of the dead through the use of a medium. And... in the parlance of spiritualism, what the hell is that? Is that your cat?
No, Yuki's in my room.
What the hell? What the?
That squeak was Peppa.
No, something just fell off my desk for no reason.
Well, you brought up ghosts, so I mean,
What the fuck?
What is happening out there? Do I need to come check on you?
No, it just
I know what I
started
did. I know what I did. I did it. It's fine. I know what I did. I turned around in my chair, and it's a spinny chair, and the arm hit my desk hard enough to knock my pencil back off. Whoa!
Peppa just
So much is
bit me.
Okay.
Can everyone calm the fuck down? Get out of here.
This is why we don't talk about ghosts.
Apparently.
Now she's scratching the shit out of my chair. Get
She
out of
was
here.
being so sweet until we started recording.
I literally just posted a picture of how cute you are, and now you're being naughty.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So,
She literally bit a
you're
hole
fine.
in my hand.
Belief 1, it is possible to communicate with the spirits of the dead through the use of a medium, and in the parlance of spiritualism, this is either a person born with like an innate gift to speak to the dead, or you can receive training to do it as well. It's not like either you're born with it or you're out of luck kind of a thing. The medium would reach out to the spirit through a seance, and the spirit would relay messages through them. The spirits could also channel the medium's energy to levitate objects, produce ectoplasm, and make various, like, noises, right? And then the medium could also relay messages through a process called automatic writing. And this is basically just they surrender control of, like, I don't know if it's their entire body or just, like, their dominant hand, and the spirit uses their hand to, like, write messages, basically. Cool. And then, yeah, the spirits lived on a higher plane than our own, and they were basically, like, one step down from being, like, all-knowing, right? Like, they knew a lot more than, like, human, like, living persons, but they weren't at the same level as God. Like, they were kind of in between. And so because they were basically one step down from being omniscient, they could be asked for advice on, like, practical matters, ethical issues, you know, just stuff like that, as well as about God and the afterlife. And that's basically it. Like, there wasn't a formal church or, like, a formal structure, so there weren't, like, rules. And then there were some, like, informal, like, club organizations kind of things, and some of those had declarations of principles. I couldn't find any examples. Like, I probably could have. That just wasn't a rabbit hole that I went down. But that was really it with, like, rules. And we'll kind of get into, like, why that's the case, because there's a reason. It's not just that they were lazy and didn't feel like it. Like, there's a reason why. So, yeah. First off, now we're going to talk about the history / like, why it was so popular. So first off, we are going to talk about two men very, very briefly. Three. So there are two men whose works are credited with, like, the textual foundations of the spiritualism movement, I suppose. So those men were Emanuel Swedenborg and Frank Mesmer. So you can go to slide 2. That's Swedenborg on the left and Mesmer on the right. So Swedenborg claimed to be a medium, and his writings were heavily influential on early spiritualism. I left it at that because I honestly didn't care that much. And, like, fair. People, like, referenced these two, but no one really credits them with, like, starting the movement, because they very much did not start the movement. I think people just kind of, it gets linked to it, but it's not like a foundation of it necessarily. It's just, like, in the timeline, this happened first, so I'm bringing it up now. So yeah, Swedenborg just did a lot of writing that was heavily influential on early spiritualism, and then Frank Mesmer created the technique of mesmerism, which is now commonly referred to as hypnotism.
I was gonna ask if that's where that came from.
Yep, yeah. And so the technique was said to be able to put people into trances, which, if you've ever been hypnotized, if it works on you, you would probably agree that that's what happens. And then spiritualists said that those trances specifically made it easier to communicate with spirits, because you were just kind of, like, taken out of your body, and it was just easier. And then there was another man named Andrew Jackson Davis. So if you can go to slide 3, that's him. He combined the two men's writings and practices into a new system called harmonial philosophy. So he claimed that Swedenborg's spirit had spoken to him during a series of mesmeric trances, and that's from the Smithsonian Mag. And so that was what gave him the idea to, like, combine the two, because he was already, like, a devoted mesmerist, I guess. I don't know what, like, the right term is for that. Because they weren't using the word hypnotist, and, like, he wasn't practicing it on other people. He was practicing it on himself. But yeah. And then, this is from Wikipedia, his 1874 book, The Principles of Nature, Her Divine Revelations, and a Voice to Mankind, dictated to a friend while in a trance state, eventually became the nearest thing to a canonical work in a spiritualist movement whose extreme individualism precluded the development of a single coherent worldview. So basically, spiritualists, which we'll get into why they're super individualist, and, like, they wouldn't have gotten together to write down anything canon, because that just wasn't how the movement worked. So this was the closest thing that they had to an actual, like, religious text coming out of spiritualism. But even with all of this, most people mark March 31st, 1848 as the beginning of the spiritualist movement. This was the day that the Fox sisters first reported communing with spirits. So if you can go to slide 4.
Dude, I could have totally been one of those Fox sisters because of the way my ankles are so snap, crackle, pop.
We're not talking about that part yet.
Sorry. I thought you were having a fit.
I was trying to make you stop talking.
I shut up. That's all I said.
Okay. So the Fox sisters were from upstate New York.
My dour expression.
They're from
upstate New York?
Yes, let me talk.
Where?
Oh my God. In an area called the Burned Over District. So if you can go to the next slide, on slide 5, this is the Burned Over District, those counties in red. So This area had seen the formation of several new religious movements during the Second Great Awakening, which occurred from about 1790 to 1840. So this was a Protestant religious revival in the United States. It de-emphasized the importance of the religious institution and encouraged lay people to make their own connection with God. So this was happening like while they were growing up, and they had
Is this how we got
into yes.
Is this how we got evangelicalism?
No, not necessarily. No, that came later. I'm gonna get into like the kinds of religions that came out of it in like a sentence.
Okay.
So
I'll stop asking questions.
Okay. So it's called the Burned Over District because spiritual fervor seemed to set the area on fire, and it's also like the 1800s, and they have nothing better to do than give places weird names. Yeah. So it's the area between the Finger Lakes and Lake Erie and consists of about 17 counties. The region produced many new religions and sparked several religious revivals, and these included Mormonism, Seventh-day Adventism. The Fox Sisters were one of those people that came out of this. There was the Shaker Revival of 1837, the Oneida Society, the Social Gospel, and the Ebenezer Colonies. And then this area was also the home of many social reform movements and major players in those reforms, which included the Oneida Institute, which was a college that preached abolitionism and was the first college in the country to admit black students on the same terms as white students. There was the New York Central College.
Good.
What? Yeah.
Sorry. That was one of my delayed thoughts.
Yep. There was the New York Central College, which was the first college to accept both black students and women from its inception and was the first in the country to employ African-American professors. And then Elizabeth Cady Stanton was also from the area. So it's just an area with very radical religious thought and radical social reform. And I mean, I've said it in previous episodes, radical in this sense, like that is an actual like political term that denotes a certain train of thought. It's not just like, it doesn't mean like the normal version of radical. It's like a specific thought and specific political sphere, I guess. So this is where the Fox Sisters were from, was this area. And do
you know why it was eventually called the Burned Over District?
I said it was because spiritual fervor seemed to set the area on fire. It was like a metaphorical.
I know. I'm going to continue that thought for you.
Okay.
And also because there was so much like religious fervor that there was like it was called Burned Over because if anyone new went there to try to start something up, people had already like just made their decisions on what kind of religion they were or whatever, or like already had so much religious fervor that there was like, quote, no more like fuel to burn, as in like minds to change. That's why it was called the Burned Over District, because you couldn't like go there and be like, I'm gonna convert all these people. It's like, no, they're already all doing their own thing. Okay, thank you, goodbye.
Okay, so with the Fox Sisters, so there were really 3 of them, but Leah was the oldest and she had already moved out and she wasn't as involved as the younger 2. So the younger 2 Fox Sisters were Margaretta and Kate, and Margaretta or Maggie, she was 14 and Kate was 11 when this started happening. So they had moved into this house with their parents. The house had a reputation for being haunted. And about a week, like in like the 3rd week of March, they started hearing these like knocking sounds. And they were able, I'm not entirely sure why, but they started like, you know, asking the, like whoever was making the knocks, like, oh, can you do 3 knocks? Can you do 5 knocks? Stuff like that. And so they did this in front of their mother. And then obviously their mother was like, what the hell is going on? So then they went out and got one of the neighbors to come in and like witness everything. Just to get like another person to come in and see it to verify that they weren't all going insane. They devised a code that allowed them to speak with the presence of creating the knocks. So like they had like 1 knock for yes, 2 for no, or something like that. And so the presence told them that he was actually the spirit of a peddler named Charles B. Rosna, who had been murdered in the house 5 years earlier and buried in a cellar. And then because this was like a small community and it was the 1840s and people had nothing better to do than talk to their neighbors, the story spread and grew really, really rapidly. And it just became so chaotic, like, in their house because so many people were coming by and, like, asking to hear the raps and everything.
Oh, my goodness.
That the 2 girls were sent to live with their siblings in Rochester. But the rapping noises, like, followed them to their siblings' homes. So then in Rochester, there was a radical Quaker couple named Amy and Isaac Post who were friends with the Foxes. They invited the girls to their home to see everything for themselves, and the girls were able to, you know, show them, like, oh, the presents followed us here. They're, you know, they did the 3, can you do 3 knocks? 1 for yes, 2 for no, whatever. And then this fully convinced the Posts that they were communing with this spirit of Charles Rosna, and they spread their story among their Quaker community. And this group became the first spiritualists. And I think this is a quote from Wikipedia. I forgot to write it down. In this way appeared the association between spiritualism and radical political causes such as abolition, temperance, and equal rights for women. So spiritualism really was, it was Quakerism, but also talking to ghosts. Like, it was an interesting blend of those 2 different things.
I was going to say those are 2 very different things, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that was why. It was because it spread among Quakers, and so the Quakers, you know, if you're the first people in a group, you kind of get to decide what group is associated with.
Yeah.
Guys, we're ghost Quakers now.
Yeah.
No fighting it.
It is so interesting to me that humans are, like, we go from, like, we're gonna burn people because they're witches to, like, oh my god, these girls can talk to ghosts. Let's just make them celebrities. Like,
that's actually one of the cultural contexts that we're going to get into. Is just that, you know, until...
And, like, obviously I know that, like, there's a big, like, time difference, but still, it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, well,
Speaking
just...
of history...
Oh, my God.
I just want to say my sentence. Go for it. Go.
No, just go.
Well, no, yours is just talk. Just whatever.
Oh, my God. Okay, well, I was trying to say that up until, like, the 1820s-ish, religion in the United States was just super Calvinistic, and, like, when you're born, your entire fate is decided, so you're fucked no matter what you do. If God has decided that you're fucked no matter what you do, and it was just super controlling and constricting, and so part of the Second Great Awakening was to, like, break out of that, which is why, one of the reasons why spiritualism was so popular was because it was a rejection of that previous generation of Protestant religion. So, yeah. Hannah, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, speaking of history repeating itself and, like, contradicting itself, did you see those motherfuckers burning books in Tennessee?
Yes.
Believe me, I did.
I'm just saying, if you don't think fascism is alive and well in this country, then you're out of your friggin' mind.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. That's one of those things that I don't have the bandwidth to do this week.
The bandwidth.
Yeah. That's one of those things that, like, my brain, like, obviously I can, but, like, my brain doesn't want to reconcile that, like, it is fucking 2022 and we are still burning books and dealing with, like, censorship in elementary schools and just, like, schools in general, and, like, what the fuck, y'all?
Yeah.
Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm aware. I'm in library school. We talk about this, like, once a week.
Yeah. It's, anyway, I'm with Hannah. Can't. Why? Also with Shannon, don't. Why?
Yeah.
Just why?
Yeah. Okay, so the Fox sisters then began demonstrating these communications in public, and they were paid for these performances. I suppose. I don't know if performance would technically be the right word at this point, but it was the first public paid demonstration of spiritualism. They became very famous mediums and conducted seances all over the country, and it was literally just this instance is what most people view as the beginning of spiritualism. It was just these 2 girls talking to ghosts is what sparked an entire movement, which to me is just crazy.
I mean,
and then we'll go over what
I say that, but also, like, we live in the social media age, so, like,
yeah, but they didn't.
Yeah, but, like, I get it but at the same time, like, they didn't have that, so it's also, like, crazy to me. So, like,
Yeah.
I could see it happening, but I also can't, you know?
Yeah, I mean...
I don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah, and, like, we're gonna get into the context that helped push it in, like, 2 seconds. And then, yeah, we're gonna go over what became of them a little bit later on, because it didn't fit in the timeline. So...
Okay.
Okay, so... Yeah, I want to take a step back here to go over some context as to how the movement grew as quickly as it did. So, it only lasted, like, in popularity, like, 80 or 90 years, which for a religious movement is not a long time. And so, at its height, which would have been the 1870s, I want to say, there were about 8 million spiritualists. Oh, also, if you can go to slide 6, these are just pictures of it, which... This was at a time when the U.S. population was like 26 million people. So that's actually like a decent amount of people.
I was going to say, that's a lot of people comparatively.
Yeah, which I mean, this 8 million was spread across the U.S. and Europe. It was most popular in the U.S. and the U.K., but it was definitely more popular in the United States, numbers-wise.
Yeah, have you guys seen The Awakening?
No.
Such a good movie.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't watch movies like that.
Stop. Rewind. Shelby, have you seen The Awakening?
I have, yes.
So good.
It is. It is a good movie.
Are you going to expand on why that's relevant to what we're talking about? Or
it's just about spiritualism.
Thank you.
What? Why else would I bring it up?
That was
it's literally just about spiritualism.
I don't know.
Shannon, it's a horror movie, but I think you would like it because it's also a period movie that's very accurate to what spiritualism was. Because it's this woman who's like, ghosts are bullshit, and she goes to this haunted boarding school. Yeah, it's so good.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah. At its height, there were about 8 million spiritualists, we think. But again, there wasn't, like, an actual church or, like, a register. So this is just a guess. Most, if not all, of the spiritualists, like actual spiritualists, were also some kind of radical reformer who promoted socialism, abolition, women's rights, etc. So many of these reformers were uncomfortable with established or like more prominent churches as they did not promote those same ideals such as women's rights or abolition. And because spiritualism...
Yeah, because those churches are dumb.
Yes. And then because spiritualism emphasized individual worship and beliefs, it was a good fit for them. And like just as an example, some of the more famous mediums included Asha Sprague and Pascal Beverly Randolph, both of whom were abolitionists. It was just they kind of went hand in hand. And then as for the actual spread of it, this is a quote from that article, from that journal that the name of which I already forgot about. The name of the article is The Rise of 19th Century American Spiritualism, 1854 to 1873. And this just kind of goes into other factors that helped it spread. Okay, so quote, on the one hand, as sectors of 19th century America industrialized and urbanized, residents became increasingly concerned about the fate of the deceased, especially their children. In part, this was because industrialized and urbanized Americans decreased their family size, thus putting more value on the individual child, just at the time that increased mobility brought increased contagion and romantic literature encouraged heightened parental feelings, end quote. So just as a side note, I got this from The Atlantic. In the mid-19th century, an estimated 20 to 40% of children died before the age of 5. And this combined with the smaller family and more modern ideas of childhood made parents like more desperate to communicate with their deceased children. And like, I feel like this sometimes gets framed as parents started suddenly caring about their children. And that's not at all what happened. Parents have always cared about their children. It just got more, it just was turning into our idea of parenthood.
Children to focus on.
Yeah, they had fewer children.
Yeah,
they had fewer children to focus on.
More individualized attention.
And just as I said, they were getting into more modern ideas of parenthood, so it's a lot more relatable to how we view parenthood. And so it's easier for us to understand, whereas before that, they had 15 kids because everybody worked on farms, and because so many of them died, they were like, well, we have to have more. But then when you move
Yeah.
to
But that
urban
doesn't,
centers,
that
Children
also
were
doesn't
less
mean that
of
they
their
weren't sad
personal
about.
workforce.
whoa.
Oh my god.
Hannah, go.
We were just saying exact opposite things. I was saying that doesn't mean that the children were less valuable to the parents or like they didn't
No,
care
they
about
weren't.
them.
No,
It's
no,
just
no.
that
Yeah.
children had in addition to like a sentimental and whatever value that like modern families place on children, they also had an economic value.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. And then so like with that whole thing, like how parents like in their heads were like, I want to communicate with my deceased child. Mary Todd Lincoln is probably the best known example of this. She is well known for holding seances in the White House after losing her son. And then after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, she just held more of them, I suppose. So this is continuing on from the rise of 19th century American spiritualism. On the other hand, a growing familiarity with world religions promoted by religious periodicals with missionary interests and general magazines with colonial interests led some to question claims of Christian uniqueness. The result was a 19th century crisis of faith, just at the time that relief from the loss associated with death was in more demand. And that kind of gets into the U.S. at this point in time, from the 1840s, right? They were on the verge of and then went through the Civil War.
Yeah.
The war really affected how people viewed death and dying. Because prior to that, I mean, obviously, like in the Revolutionary War, this wasn't necessarily the case either. But I mean, the U.S. war, like the Civil War, just by virtue of being a civil war, has the highest U.S. casualty rate. And it is like, you know, the most U.S. casualty rates like on our own soil. Yet most people who died in the war were not able to be given a proper funeral.
Did we invent refrigeration during this point to get the bodies home, or formaldehyde or something like that? I can't remember.
I have no idea.
I'm gonna look it up.
Please do.
I was gonna say that sounds mildly familiar, but
I've never heard that once in my life, but that doesn't mean that that's not true. It just means I haven't heard it. So yeah, many funeral rites were unable to be performed if the person died in the war. And then people also just couldn't like say goodbye to the person, which, you know, prior to this funeral rites, like they were handled by the family completely. Like they cleaned the body, they dressed the body, they buried the body, they did everything. And so being able to not being able to do that left a lot of people just feeling kind of lost. And without like that kind of sense of closure, and they felt like they weren't able to do right by their relative who died. And so this left a lot of people concerned that their loved one's spirit was kind of lost as well. And they wanted to know if they were able to move on, if they were trapped somewhere. You know, they didn't know, and they wanted to know. And so the offer of communication with the spirit would have been way too good to pass up. Especially just when, like, that many people died. Like, you left so, like, it was, yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, you basically have an entire country of people mourning.
Exactly.
And then you give them the option, essentially, of being able to talk to their lost loved one. Like, it's going to pick up popularity amongst even just a small group of people, but then to have it with, like, basically the entire country, like, of course it's going to spread.
Yeah,
it
like,
was
I just looked it up.
arterial embalming is what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
They didn't just like paint makeup on you anymore. They like
preserved you,
shoved you full of preservatives, and shipped you home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, like, even that would have been taking away some of that, like the traditional funeral rites that they had at the time.
Yeah.
And that's even if they knew who the person was and were able to get them shipped home. Like, so many people were just buried where they died.
Thomas has told me some really gross things about what they used to do.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
Just the reason why, if you are like excavating a Civil War battlefield, you'll find a bent bayonet.
Why?
Yeah.
To drag the bodies to the big pit.
Okay.
It's so gross.
Okay. So I've got one more, like, the rest of these are all kind of cultural things, because this was, like, a cultural movement, I suppose. But this is a quote from the Victorian web. It's kind of long, but I think it kind of helps put things in perspective as well. So, quote, "The Victorians were haunted by the supernatural. They delighted in ghost stories and fairy tales, and in legends of strange gods, demons, and spirits, in pantomimes and extravaganzas full of supernatural machinery, in Gothic yarns of reanimated corpses and vampires. Even avowedly realist novels were full of dreams, premonitions, and second sight. It was not simply a matter of stories and storytelling, though, for the material world they inhabited often seemed somehow supernatural. Disembodied voices over the telephone, the superhuman speed of the railway, near instantaneous communication through telegraph wires, the collapsing of time and distance by modern technologies that were transforming daily life was often felt to be uncanny." And so I saw this in a lot of the articles that I read. A lot of people's train of thought was, we have so much technology that is achieving seemingly impossible things, so why wouldn't communing with spirits be possible? And some even considered, like, spiritualist techniques, such as, like, the seances and the automatic writing and things like that. Like, they considered that to be a form of, like, new technology. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's saying they have, like, all of this new crazy technology. Like, before that you couldn't really, like, communicate across the ocean, but now you can.
You couldn't even conceive of that.
Yeah,
listen,
and
the telegraph is real, so that means that this Ouija board is real.
Basically,
right.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, like, that train of thought, honestly, isn't that.
It's not crazy.
Big of a leap.
Like, I get it. I get why they would. I understand where they would be coming from with that train of thought.
Yeah, like, obviously in, like, modern times, you're like, yeah, no, that's a little crazy, like, to take it that far, but, like,
we can't look at it modern time,
Yeah,
because that's.
But
not,
yeah, if you think about it, in, like, they've never had any, like, anything that crazy.
Yeah.
So.
Because, like, even the year before the telegraph came out, if you told someone about a telegraph and the possibility of it, they would look at you like you were nuts. You know? It's just people. Yeah. And then I also included, in parentheses, also everybody was probably high from gas leaks from their gas lamps, but that's an anecdotal theory.
I was gonna say that, and, like...
Wait, back up. What?
Okay, so everybody had, like, gas lighting, and, like, there is an anecdotal, like, I don't think it's been studied theory that the reason why Victorians were so obsessed with ghosts, and because, like, there are a lot of reports of ghosts from this time, was because they were high from gas leaks from their lamps.
Oh, no, that's, like, true. It's not just anecdotal. There's this series of documentaries on YouTube called The Dangers of the Insert Time Home. So, like, the dangers of the Victorian home. It's all like, yeah, those fuckers used to blow themselves up all the time because there were gas leaks left, right, and center. Also, they were high all the time.
Yeah, because, like, Jessica, my sister, sent me that one. I mean, it's a Tumblr post, but it's basically, I'm just going to read it, but it's thinking fondly about the entire genre of Victorian hauntings that were, quote, everybody who stayed in the house after dark saw weird shit going on for months until the entire structure suddenly combusted of its own ghostly accord, end quote, which abruptly ended as soon as we stopped lighting our homes with vast quantities of odorless gas. Yeah. So, like, it makes sense. Addition, plus, like, wallpaper was poisonous.
I was just about to say, all the wallpaper had arsenic in it. Anytime you heated that, it would just shed into your skin, and that's why all your kids are dead.
Your hats had mercury in it. Like, everyone
The mercury
was
wouldn't necessarily kill you because of the hat. It would just kill the hat makers. But your dress, if it was poorly made and it was green, it definitely had arsenic in it, and you would die from that. Yeah, it had arsenic
in it. A lot of utensils, especially poorly made, cheaper utensils, had lead in them still.
Yeah. And so, like, there's a lot of reasons why...
Your Victorian home was haunted?
Yeah.
It was mostly just you.
Yeah, it was probably just
you. You were haunted by chemicals.
Right.
What was it? I saw... So, like, you know how back in, like, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was there were so many goddamn serial killers? And it just kind of, like, tapered off after the 70s. A lot of people think it's because 1972 was when they outlawed lead paint.
Yeah, and didn't
so
they
that,
ban,
like,
like, lead and
stopped.
gasoline, too?
Yeah, and, like, leaded gasoline and stuff. Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
So,
no one was growing up with poison air and walls.
yeah. And, like,
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
mean,
people
that
are
makes
also, like,
sense.
yeah, a
So,
lot of people
like-
also, like, that's why boomers are the way they are. They were raised in houses full of lead.
They're just stupid.
Lead and
No
asbestos.
offense.
Yeah,
Like-
lead and asbestos. Like, yeah.
Look, I'm not saying it's the main cause,
No,
but
but it's
like
certainly
it
a
definitely
factor.
is a factor.
It's a
I wouldn't
factor.
put it past that.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. But yeah, I
Sorry,
just
you
wanted
have
to.
boomer. It's incurable.
But yeah, I just wanted to include that just because, especially with. This is my next point. It was mostly practiced by upper middle class women. They had gaslighting. Like, this was definitely.
And green dresses and green wallpaper.
Yep.
They
And
were
then
just
dresses and
dying.
Yeah.
Also, did you know they used to put
Wasn't,
formaldehyde in milk?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was supposed to be just like
They
a little
put-
bit per like a certain amount, but
Yeah.
the milk industry was like, well, let's just do all of it for no reason.
Yeah.
So that's where
They
skim milk
put-
comes from, because that's why it's blue, because it like they did that back in the Victorian era, except it wasn't water that they added, it was formaldehyde. Anyway, thank you, goodbye.
Oh, I didn't know that.
isn't this the time when opium was really big too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
So, like,
yeah.
Everyone is basically your daily life is killing you with chemicals, but also like you're high. as
Everyone
shit.
is high on opium, especially in the
You know
UK. Hell
So,
yeah.
like,
This is coming
we're just
around
like ghosts.
again. We have an opioid epidemic, and
We
do.
like a lot of women are upper middle class women are in like fucking weird cults. Like, I'm speaking specifically about like QAnon and stuff, but
Yeah,
wow.
but also like
They're
I'm
in
not saying it's like
MLMs, like-
spiritualism on this level, but like a lot of like millennials and Gen Zers, Gen X, Gen
No.
Z
Gen Z.
see.
Gen X is before
are
us.
like, yeah, that's right, are
Yeah.
like really into like witchy things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, didn't
So-
like baby witches on TikTok curse the moon or something?
Yeah. A lot of people are into astrology and a lot of more new agey kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like
We call it new
Which,
age,
I mean,
but
like,
like
we
this
go
shit has
through
been going on
phases
since
with,
the
like-
medieval times.
I know.
Right.
That's just like the term that we have
I
for
know.
it. Yeah.
Anyway, everything is cyclical. I can't wait for World War III. Let's go, Russia. Come on.
I mean,
Break it
God,
on.
I forgot that even happened too. God, there's just
Yeah, I saw a video this week
There's
of
so much
Ukrainian
happening this
children
week.
with. I saw a video this week of Ukrainian school children with like, wooden cutouts of AK-47s practicing pretend how to hold a gun for when Russia invades them.
That just makes me sad.
Yep. Our planet's garbage, and
I can't handle that right now.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I can't handle anything this week. It's
Look, I
fine.
mean,
This week fucking
that's
blows.
why as a child I
Like-
learned how to evacuate a country within 30 minutes. So like,
Yeah.
this is
I've
skills that I have
I
tried.
cried in an email. I spent all of Tuesday just
Okay, I cried at that
You
email,
did.
and I
You cried
did.
in that email. I've had a week and my brain that's why I picked this, because it's fun.
After
All right,
this,
back
I need to tell you why I
fun
cried this week.
Victorian
You can
nonsense.
tell
I
me.
mean, I
that's
cried a
fine.
couple of times, but
Why
my
did
big
you cry this week?
No, I'll tell you after this.
Oh, okay.
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 I'm not gonna spill my soul onto the
I
internet.
don't know. Like,
Wouldn't be the first time we've done
need
that.
to know my problems.
exactly. Like, that's all we do is complain. Anyway, okay. So, spiritualism. It was mostly practiced by upper and middle class. I put women, it was white women. Like, I think I just inherently, it's just white women.
When did the Victoria era just assume white women?
Yeah. Honestly.
All of history has just assumed that the major person that we're discussing is white. So, it's just kind of,
Unless otherwise
Unfortunately.
specified.
yeah, it's just inherent. So yeah, it was, like I kind of said, it was like mostly practiced through seances, which were held in private homes, and through lectures, which were held in public spaces. And these lectures were often the only way that a woman could like publicly speak, like give a talk kind of a thing. Because
Yeah,
at
it's
the
because-
time,
Sorry.
no, just like academic lectures were reserved for men, but
Gah.
spiritualism lectures were not.
Well, it goes back to that idea of not spheres of influence. Yeah, spheres of influence, right?
Yeah, this was one of
yeah.
this
That's
was
what it goes back to, because women are like the angel of the house. They have like a divine whatever the fuck. So it's inherent that women should be allowed to talk about spiritualism because they're more in touch with their spirituality than men are, because men are like the doers and the seekers and the blah blah blah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Why don't we have a Victorian podcast? I would love to
Shannon
just
and I were
talk
talking
about how stupid they are all day long.
We were basically talking about how we need to add into our description
social,
that like
high class,
just do
fashionable
Victorian nonsense.
events. Yeah, so
not always.
This
but
is at least once a month. Someone's doing something. In Britain, like our most common topic, invitations to tea, although prosperous and fashionable, often included table turning, a type of seance in which spirits were said to communicate with people seated around a table by tilting and rotating the table. This was only 5 years after the Fox sisters. Like, this thing was so fast.
Oh, I wanted to see if I could do something into the microphone. Hold on. Everyone be quiet for 1 second.
Okay.
Do you hear that?
No.
No.
Wait, I'm trapped on my thing. Hold up. Did you hear that one?
No. I'm sure Audacity picked it up, but we can't hear it on Discord. It
definitely did, but those were my clicky-clacky ankles.
Not there yet!
Oh, shit. I thought we already talked about that.
No.
Nope. You've talked about it multiple times.
I'm very excited about it. I just really love the Fox sisters. They were a bunch of con artists. And they were great and did spiritualism stuff. The end.
Anyway.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I'm just ruining it.
You're fine. So it was very, fashionable to have a medium over to host a seance. And, if your only options for tea, which was, again, tea was a social event, especially if you were an upper-class woman, you had nothing else to do. If your only options during tea were to gossip about the same 5 people you've known your entire life, or to be involved in a seance and commune with spirits, which one would you rather do?
Have you guys ever been to a parlor? Like a traditional parlor?
I have not been to one, but I know what they are.
I have.
It's so much fun, and there is always some aspect of spiritualism. The last time I went to a parlor, there was a lot of tarot card engagement.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if it was a women's gathering sort of tea, then yes, it was a lot of gossip about the same 5 people, but a lot of times, especially around this time, it would kind of basically turn into a spiritualist meeting.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so bored of my dead-end marriage.
Might as well just make it a spiritualist meeting.
Yes.
I'm so bored of my dead-end marriage. Let's just be witches. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And so, I also added this in just to kind of give it some, modern perspective on it. So, I would compare it to, going to someone's house and, playing with a Ouija board or doing tarot cards or something, except that there is technically an added layer of, religious belief and societal context.
Yeah.
If we play with a Ouija board, the 3 of us would be worried about bringing in a demon, but, a lot of people think that, nothing's gonna happen. It's just a fun, silly thing to do. And so, during spiritualist gatherings, if you're one of those people who thinks it'll work, they genuinely believe they would be communing with the spirit. Or you could be other people and be oh, this is just fun. There was that dual-sided,
Oh, Margaret, didn't
I
your
would
son
say
die in
it
the
would
war?
be similar
Let's
to,
contact him.
If we got together and Hannah did our tarot readings versus if we got together with someone who actually practices the Wiccan faith.
Yeah.
Are you calling me a fraud?
No, I'm just saying that you are not Wiccan, and therefore it has that. We are missing that layer of the religious aspect to it.
Also, just a lot of these formal.
Yes, Hannah, you're a fraud.
I know.
Also, a lot of these seances, these formal ones, they did hire a medium basically. So it is kind of still you're getting that Wiccan in there if we're using this other example.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a
Get
social
your
event.
Wiccan here. Genuine Wiccan.
Oh my gosh. I had a partner when I was in my East Asian religions class in college, who she and I did our end of the semester project together, but she was Wiccan. And everyone in that class was so mean to her when she would like bring up examples of like, because we were talking about multiple different religions. And so she'd be like, oh, well, I practice, like, I'm a practicing Wiccan and like, this is some similarities and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it was in Georgia, so it's the South and, you know, fucking Bible Belt. And they were already like, oh my
Y'all are
God, we're
communing
talking
with
about
the devil.
Buddhism. And blah, blah, blah. But yeah, basically, everyone basically treated her like she was a devil worshiper. And I felt so bad because I was like doing the project with her and she was like, I just hate how everyone always looks at me and like basically like rolls their eyes when I start talking. And I was like, but it's a valid religion and it's a valid thought you have. And I'm so sorry. People suck. But anyway, she was cool. That was not related at all, but you know.
That's okay. Okay. So there were the seances, which were like private social gatherings. There were lectures, which were like public social gatherings that women could attend and like actually talk at, you know, which helped spread it as well because women were like, I just want to like talk as if I'm intelligent. Can we please do this, please?
Right.
And then there were also spiritualist newspapers and periodicals. So if you can go to slide 7, these are just a few of them that I could find on Google quickly. And so these newspapers were also like one of the big driving forces behind the quick spread of the movement. And so now we're going to get into that study that I looked at, the rise of spiritualism in 18 whatever. So this study is from 2010, and it analyzed data from 2 of these periodicals to try and come up with actual data to explain the rapid rise of spiritualism. Because like we have all this cultural context, but, like, it's mostly anecdotal. Like, we can't actually say, like, and point to this did this did this, just, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like a more sociological, like, theory. And some people just like having data. And so they were trying to find out, like, is there a way we can prove some of these anecdotal beliefs about the spread of spiritualism by analyzing these newspapers and looking at their data? And they kind of did. And they found that the data from these newspapers matched up with a lot of the anecdotes, which I thought was interesting. So the rest of this, these are all quotes from this study. So spiritualism peaked at a time when, quote, concern with the dead increased and the consoling power of traditional religion diminished and lessened as the culture continued to shift. And then, quote, for example, after mid-century infant mortality decline, spiritualism lost its credibility as a source of consolation because of increasingly blatant performances by spiritualists and discoveries of fraud discredited the idea of contact with the dead. Right? So it's like we had all of this, but then as infant mortality declined, this just became less important, especially when you couple it with the fraud, which we're going to get into a lot later. It also showed that, so like these periodicals had advertisements for like seances and meetings and lectures. And that was like a lot of their content was advertisements for these. It showed that the majority of spiritualist gatherings that were advertised in the periodicals occurred in just 7 states. So it was Massachusetts, New York, Ohio, Maine, Illinois, Connecticut, and Michigan. And it was also highly concentrated in a few cities and towns. And this tracks with the anecdotal understanding that spiritualism was mostly an East Coast and Midwest phenomenon. Its association with abolitionism kind of prevented its spread in the South. Whereas that would have been more popular in the North, especially in the East Coast. I just thought that was weird. Because, like, you think, like, oh, it was, like, a nationwide thing. And, like, it was, but it was super heavily concentrated in, like, a very small number of physical locations, which I just thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And then it also showed that after the Civil War, the amount of lectures declined while the amount of meetings increased. Which suggests that people were like, I don't want to learn about this anymore. I want to talk to my dead husband, right? Like the meetings are going to be more popular after the war because people are trying to talk with their dead relative.
Yeah.
And then, quote, in addition, the post-war decline of lectures and increase of meetings almost certainly reveal a transition in American spiritualism that is already familiar in other new religious movements, from sporadic, enthusiastic activity to settled, organized activity. So I just thought that was interesting because they were able to use data to like actually show that what we think about spiritualism is true. And I just like data. And so I think this is the last influence. It's good. It is. The rise of photography was weirdly influential on spiritualism. So
Get that
photography
ectoplasm.
was... Yes. So photography was first invented in 1839, and it was a popular interest among the middle and upper class in the U.S. And so there was, likely some decent overlap between photography enthusiasts and spiritualists. And this led to the first spirit photograph being taken by William Mumler of Boston in 1862. So if you can go to slide 8, these are some examples of spirit photographs. So for people who don't want to look at the slides or Google it, it's basically just like a normal Victorian photo, and then there's like a white figure next to someone or sitting on someone's lap or draped over them, hugging them from behind.
Or has this lady in a headlock.
Yeah, this woman is in a headlock. So the story goes, with William Mumler, he was like a hobby photographer. He took a self-portrait and upon developing it realized that a ghostly arm was draped across his shoulder. I don't think that this photo I've included is the first one that he took. But whatever. He concluded that this ghostly figure must be the spirit of his deceased cousin. And then this sparked his interest in spiritual photography. Or in spirit photography. Only not really, because a little bit later he revealed exactly what had happened. So this is a quote from Art Store. Back then, early photographic negatives were created using cleanable and recyclable glass plates. Recycling poorly cleaned plates resulted in small areas of a previously exposed image remaining adhered to the glass. When this glass was reused, a double exposure was created, and when the overlapped image contained a face, it appeared as a semi-transparent and otherworldly presence in the final photographic print. As it turns out, Mumler knew he had taken his self-portrait using an insufficiently clean plate, describing in his memoir how he shared the ghostly image with a spiritualist friend as a gag. Noting his friend's amazed reaction and unwavering belief in what he saw, Mumler realized he'd stumbled across a potentially lucrative venture, especially when his friend requested to share the image with his circle of spiritualist friends. So he knew from the start that he was faking these photos.
Yeah.
There's a really famous one of these with Abraham Lincoln in it.
Yeah, I tried to find that one, but I didn't want to look that hard.
So you thought about looking for that one, and then didn't.
I googled spirit photograph, and when it didn't immediately come up, I just moved on, basically.
Okay.
I don't care. You know what it looks
I
like.
know. It's just...
And so, I should not be clicking a pen while I'm recording. Mumler started up a spirit photography business. He charged $10 per sitting, which was an extraordinarily high price. Yeah. And so the thing is, this technique had been used before. So this is again from Art Store. Mass-produced stereoscopic images depicting comical ghost scenes, a practice so popular that guides to creating spiritual effects were written for stereoscopic image producers. So it's not like a viewfinder like we used to have when we were little, a viewfinder, right? It's that red plastic thing you put in front of you, and it's got that little wheel of tiny pictures, and you put it in front of you up to a light and click it, and it goes through pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar to that. And so they had
if you've been to a museum, you've probably seen one.
Yeah.
The stereoscopic thing.
Yeah, it's similar to that. And so these photos had they purposely double exposed these photos so that it looked like there were ghosts, and they posed them in a comical way. So people this was a known technique, at least within photography. I couldn't figure out exactly how widespread that knowledge was, because apparently people just didn't know this because his business grew steadily until he got caught the following year. So quote, in February of 1863, a sitter recognized a ghostly countenance as a living acquaintance who was photographed by Mumler some weeks earlier, which exposed him as a fraud. That was a quote from Art Store. So he was forced to close the shop in Boston, but he simply moved it to New York. And this resulted in him being put on trial for fraud in 1869, although he was acquitted since no one was able to, like, observe the process of double exposure. They basically, like, they never saw him do it, so they couldn't actually prove that he had done it, basically.
Oh, my goodness.
It's 1869. Their standard of evidence was shoddy at best. Regardless of Mumler, spirit photography was a hit, and it undoubtedly helped grow spiritualism even more, because they saw this as proof, right? Like, people saw this as evidence of ghosts because there were ghosts in the photo. But Mumler is a good segue into how most practitioners, like famous ones who you had to pay to go see, were frauds. So now, Hannah, we are finally going to talk about the Fox sisters and finish their story up.
Silence. On the Fox sisters.
So in 1888, what?
I said I can break my silence on the Fox sisters.
Yes.
Yes.
In 1888, so 40 years later, Kate and Maggie Fox admitted that they had in fact faked the entire thing. So if you go to slide 9, this is just them a little bit older. So,
and this is where I would have clicked my ankles had I been listening better. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So they had developed serious drinking problems over the years. Oof. Kate and Maggie had. So Leah, who was their older sister, was concerned that Kate wasn't able to properly care for her children, and she brought this concern. I don't actually know the details of how this all happened, but the spiritualist community also shared this concern and were, like, publicly saying that Kate's children should be taken away from her. You know, so they got very disillusioned with the community as a whole. And then Maggie took Kate's side. So, eager to harm Leah and the spiritualists, they spoke to a reporter and set up a public demonstration where they showed exactly how they made the wraps. It was by Maggie cracking her toes.
I love that.
Yeah, they even explained that, so, like, back when this happened, right, it was March 31st, 1848, but they'd been hearing, like, weird noises, their parents, at least, had been hearing weird noises for a few days. They explained that the initial raps that their parents had heard at their supposedly haunted house had been them tying an apple to a string and, like, tapping it against the walls and floors of their home, or, like, dropping it and letting it bounce, kind of treating it like a yo-yo, right?
Yeah.
And then, on top of that, like, they weren't, because, you know, they said it was a peddler named Charles Rosna who had been murdered. That man never existed. They were never able to find a record. A few years after 1848, they'd actually dug up the basement, and they did find, like, rib bones and things, but examiners at the time were like, this is not, like, proof of anything. And so, yeah, it was just that Maggie had, like, really crackable toes, apparently, and was able to, like, really, like, continuously make this noise. And one of the articles I read pointed out that March 31st is April Fool's Eve.
It's true.
And yeah, I don't know like how popular April Fool's was in 1848, but, like, that's a valid, like, thing to point out. And then, like, at the time they were doing this confession about how they faked it, they were basically just like, we didn't think our parents would believe us. We thought that they would be, like, quit being stupid children and quit playing pranks on us, you know? But then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then they were like, okay, I guess we're mediums now. But, you know, by this point, regardless of their confession, spiritualism had already gotten bigger than them, you know what I mean? And many spiritualists rejected their confessions, which, like, I get why, because they confessed out of, like, revenge for their sister. But, yeah. So now I'm going to go through some more of the practitioners. I'll note who was exposed to fraud and who wasn't. This is not to suggest that those who were not exposed, like, were or were not frauds. I just wanted to just go through a list of them. And a lot of them are frauds, but a few of them are not. And then I got this list specifically from Wikipedia. So if you can go to slide 10. So there was Emma Hardin. I don't know if it's Hardinge or Hardinge, Britain. She was a British spiritualist, known best for just her writings on spiritualism. Excuse me. She mostly lectured and organized events, and she never claimed to be a medium from what I could see. And then, so she's on the left. On the right is Adelma Vey. She was a Hungarian spiritualist who claimed to be a medium, and she wrote a lot of books about spiritualism. I think those are the only two on the list who were not exposed as frauds, and then the rest all were.
They're like, we're just writing books.
Yeah, they're like, I'm just gonna write my books and go to lectures and things. So then we're just going to go through a bunch of people very quickly. So if you go to slide 11, there was William Stanton, I guess, Moses, who's on the left. He was an Anglican clergyman who filled 24 notebooks with automatic writing, but he was later found out to be a fraud. And like, I'm not going to go into
That's
like...
not good for business if you're a clergyman.
It was after... yeah. So he wasn't exposed as a fraud until like decades after his death. But yeah, I didn't look into him that much, but I'm kind of wondering if he was a former clergyman. I'm not really sure. But like automatic writing, that's so easy to fake. Like you just write shit. Like
the ghost is possessing me.
Yeah, like it's like it's really easy to fake.
That was my pen clicking. Now I'm gonna be possessed in the night. Just watch.
You're the one who lives in a haunted house.
Yeah. So then the woman on the right is Eusapia Palladino. She was an Italian medium who's said to be able to levitate and move objects and conjure spirits. She was found to be a fraud. She was just faking the whole thing. I couldn't find examples. Faking. No, I couldn't find examples of how they were faking these things for some of them. It was just, they were exposed as a fraud. And I was like, but what were they doing? Like, I want to know how they were doing these things. But it's fine. So if we go to slide 10, William Eglinton's on the left. All I have, he's a British medium who was also exposed as a fraud. That's all I know. And then on the right are the Bangs sisters. So this is Mary and Elizabeth. They were based in Chicago. They made a career out of painting spirit portraits. So like, it's similar to spirit photography, but they would like go into trances and then like paint portraits of the spirits that they were seeing. And they did other stuff too, like other medium activities. They were exposed as frauds. I don't know how. They just were. And then if you go to 13, the nice thing with this list is that all these people had photographs. It was nice. So on the left is Mina Crandon. So she was a popular medium in the 1920s. She was most well known for producing an ectoplasm hand during her seances. And then this is a quote. Ooh. I forgot to write down from where. I need to get better about that. Usually, though, if I don't put where the quote's from, it's from Wikipedia. Quote, the hand was later exposed as a trick when biologists found it to be made from a piece of carved animal liver. But in 1934, the psychical researcher Walter Franklin Prince, I can't fucking read today, described the Crandon case as the most ingenious, persistent, and fantastic complex of fraud in the history of psychic research. So like, it was a really good trick, but it was still a trick. And then Harry Houdini had a really big role in her debunking. We kind of get into him a little bit later. But like, Harry Houdini was like the famous magician from the late 1800s, early 1900s. He kind of had like a secondary career of like exposing spiritualists because he hated spiritualism with the white hot intensity of 1,000 Suns. Like, he thought it was the dumbest thing ever and it was extremely fake and that they were taking advantage of people who were in mourning, which like they kind of were. So, the woman on the right here is Etta Reet, I guess. It's Reet. She held seances where spirits could use a trumpet to produce noises and voices. I don't know how. Like, I don't know, like,
why would
what
you pick
kind
the worst instrument to do
yes,
that?
for one thing, you picked the worst instrument.
Yes.
Two,
trumpet players, you know what you are.
You know. And if you don't, you're the worst kind of trumpet player.
If you think you're hot shit, you're the problem.
Yes, exactly, yes. So, I couldn't get an explanation of what kinds of noises they were supposedly making with this trumpet. But she was exposed as a fraud by a physicist named Christian Birkeland when he discovered that the noises produced by the trumpet, because there's only this one trumpet, were caused by chemical explosions induced by potassium in water and in other cases by lycopodium powder. So
she was just doing mini explosions in her trumpet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I have this here too. Seances were like incredibly easy to fake, especially before electric lighting, because like they were held in the dark, but even if they weren't, homes were lit by gas lamps and like fireplaces and candles, so it's not like visibility was great at any given time.
And also
at night,
everyone was high,
right?
Hallucinating on them fumes.
And they were also high from the gas, like
Probably had some opium before the seance.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So,
I see you.
and then I have 2 more fraudsters.
but green dress to the seance. What?
Okay, so if you can go to slide 14.
Is that a word? I just made a word. Arsenogenic. Is that a word? I made it up.
Carcinogenic.
Well,
no, because in my head I was like, is that a word? But then I was like, it's carcinogenic is the word that I was thinking of. Can I go on? Are we good?
Yes, I
Okay.
just fancied myself as Shakespeare there for a second, but
I mean, I know what you mean by that word. Like,
yeah, yeah, I know what I meant.
yeah.
Not
I
like
mean, I
arson,
got
like
it.
it's gonna say. I almost whatever. It doesn't matter. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Just
Arsenic.
Arsenic.
What she's talking about.
It's fine. Anyway, okay, so on slide 14, the woman on the left is Helen Duncan. So I just have this quote. Again, I'm guessing it's from Wikipedia because I didn't put a citation because I'm stupid. In 1928, photographer Harvey Metcalf attended a series of seances at Duncan's house and took flash photographs of Duncan and her alleged materialization spirits, including her spirit guide, Peggy. I want to pull out of this for a second. Spirit
guide named Peggy.
Yes. So spirit guide in this context means like you would
Isn't
have
it like your ghost helper?
Yes, you would have like this particular spirit who would help guide you through seances and would help you like communicate with other spirits. I feel like spirit guide probably has different connotations in other cultures, but that's what it means for spiritualists. And so like Duncan's supposed like gift was to materialize spirits, and this included Peggy, her spirit guide. So continuing with the quote, the photographs revealed the quote-unquote spirits to have been fraudulently produced using dolls made from painted paper mache masks draped in old sheets. Which, like, that's one of those things where it's like, really, guys, you couldn't tell? But, like, again, it's dark and people are susceptible to things and whatever. Duncan was later tested by Harry Price at the National Laboratory of Psychical Research. Photographs revealed the ectoplasm that she supposedly produced to be made from cheesecloth, rubber gloves, and cutout heads from magazine covers. Mm-hmm. Because ectoplasm often included, like when you took photographs of it, there would be like a face in the ectoplasm, right? That was what it was from. And then this last one, it's not a fraud. It's just a bit much, I guess, is how I want to phrase it. So in early 1921, a spiritualist named Thomas Lynn Bradford decided that he was going to determine once and for all if there's actually an afterlife and whether or not spirits could communicate with the living. And he recruited another spiritualist named Ruth Doran to assist him. So his method of doing this was that on February 5th, 1921, he died by suicide in his apartment in Detroit with the plan to communicate with Doran later on.
Oh, no.
She was never able to get in contact with him or receive any communication from his spirit, so this experiment was apparently a failure.
That sucks.
Again, it's just a bit much.
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. That's pretty much all you can say about it. It's like...
I mean, good for you for, like, really believing in the cause, but... Mm-hmm. Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So... Even with all of these publicly fraudulent practitioners, spiritualism remained popular throughout the 1920s. And if you can go to slide 15, these are some of the more famous followers. So these include Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Hell yeah.
He was best friends with Harry Houdini, which is hysterical because Harry Houdini thought he was the dumbest motherfucker on this planet because he he believed in spiritualism.
I know,
also,
he was like, listen, Sherlock Holmes was great, but you are so fucking dumb if you believe in ghosts.
Stupid. Well, and then like when I was doing the spirit photography part, I remembered the fairy pictures. And so I looked up the year for that, but it was on like 1907. So in 1907, someone produced these double exposure photographs that appeared to have fairies, but like they were double exposure photographs. But Doyle fully thought that they had captured photographs of fairies. So like that's where he's coming from there.
He should have. I don't know. Was he friends with Tolkien?
Really
he should have been friends with Tolkien.
Okay.
Because Tolkien would have been all about that shit. Him and C.S. Lewis, they would have been all over that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Magic? I'm in.
Yeah. So some of these other people are William Makepeace Thackeray, which is very difficult for me to say, Lewis Carroll, Christina Rossetti, Lawrence Oliphant, and Rudyard Kipling. And then, like, there were roughly 8 million, like, not famous people who also were followers. These are just, like, the more famous ones.
Did I tell you that sorry, this is related to Christina Rossetti.
No, you're fine.
Did I tell you that on Halloween I did a dramatic reading of, not the entire thing because it's really long, but parts of the Goblin Market?
You did tell me that, yes.
Because I was like, people don't understand how, I mean, weirdly sexual this is. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
With those weird incestuous sisters. Ooh, it's just so weird. There's lots of dripping fruit. Anyway. That's one way to spice up a party.
Yeah. Some people do seances. You read Goblin Market out loud.
I read Victorian poetry.
Fine.
Can't be helped.
So, obviously there are also skeptics, because, duh. So there's Harry Houdini, as I mentioned. So you go to slide 16. Harry Houdini's on the left. This is a quote from the New Yorker. I wrote down the citation this time. In one of the most publicized attempts to test the claims of spiritualists, Scientific American offered $5,000 in prize money, which is an insane amount of money. And this would have been in the 20s or so, the 1920s or so. In prize money to anyone who could produce psychic phenomena sufficient to convince a committee that consisted of academics from Harvard and MIT, psychic experts, and also Harry Houdini, who knew something about illusions and developed a sideline in exposing those which Huskers were trying to pass off as real. Armed with electroscopes and galvanometers? Yeah, the committee tested all mediums who presented themselves for scrutiny, sometimes attending multiple seances before rendering a verdict. I don't think anyone won this prize, and Houdini prevented Mina Crandon from winning the prize. I just think it's so funny that Harry Houdini was like, you know what? I'm not doing enough with my time being, like, the most well-known magician in all of history. I need to go bust some ghosts. Yeah.
And I'm gonna prove it. Me, Harry Houdini.
It's just so funny to me. And then Charles Dickens was also a known skeptic. That's him on the right.
Okay, why does half of Charles Dickens' beard look like it's been blown off? Like,
I
do you
don't
see
know.
what I'm talking about?
I think
there's just some ghost hairs floating there.
I know. I don't know if it, like, got stuck in his collar or what happened there, but
that shit.
If you're gonna get the one picture of your life taken, wouldn't you, like, brush it out or something?
you'd think, I don't know, it's Charles Dickens. So
That's true.
yeah, he was a known skeptic of spiritualism, and he, like, published a lot of articles on the subject. And this is from Victorian
Such
Web.
as A Christmas Carol, which was
Such as A
about
Christmas
ghosts.
Carol, yes. Well, that's the thing, like I said earlier from that quote from the Victorian Web, like, even people who, like, didn't believe in it, they included the elements because they were so popular. Like, I know.
Buy my books. I know, I'll write a Christmas story about ghosts.
Ghosts. I know. So this is also a quote from Victorian Web. After his death, Charles Dickens, of all Victorian authors, was the most frequent target of medium communications in seance rooms. As is known, which I didn't know this because I don't know anything about Charles Dickens, Dickens did not finish his last novel, The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
No, he died.
In 1873, Thomas James, an American printer, completed it, claiming that Dickens' spirit had dictated it to him.
It had Dickens stated it to him.
Oh,
sorry.
Man.
Not sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry.
No, you're fine. I feel like... I obviously don't know this for sure, but I feel like they picked on him the most because he was so outspoken about hating it, you know? And he did have, like, that unfinished novel. But, yeah. And then if you can go to slide 17, this is the last slide. Other well-known skeptics included George Eliot, Alfred Tennyson, and Michael Faraday. And then I only have a little bit more. So, additionally, the field of parapsychology helped to expose many frauds. So parapsychology is the study of alleged psychic phenomena. So this could include, you know, being a medium, telekinesis, ESP, stuff like that. And this is a quote from Wikipedia. Around as early as 1882, with the founding of the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, parapsychologists emerged to investigate spiritualist claims. The SPR's investigations into spiritualism exposed many fraudulent mediums, which contributed to the decline of interest in physical mediumship. So parapsychology is considered like a fringe or even a pseudoscience. research rarely makes it into, like, actual scientific journals.
But don't they do a lot of, like, debunking things?
Exactly. That was my next point. But they do a whole lot of debunking. And even, you know, in 1882, so not even 40 years into spiritualism as a movement, they were debunking people. So, like, I think it's one of those things where people are just being uppity about what they consider to be science. Because, like, I get that, like, debunking things does not require necessarily, like, a breakthrough scientific research or anything. But I don't know. I just don't necessarily... I don't know. I just feel like it gets shunted off to the side, and that's not necessarily what we should be doing because it does do so much debunking of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, I talked about... Didn't I talk about that in my Tina Reach story?
I think so.
I think I did.
I don't remember. Probably. I'm kind of surprised we haven't brought them up before. Honestly.
I think they were in my story.
Okay. I think they kind of involve themselves in a lot of stuff with the Warrens. If I'm not... I might be pulling that out of my ass.
Sure they do.
I might be pulling that out of my ass. I'm not really sure. But they do a lot of this kind of debunking stuff.
Well, the Warrens are dead, so... I mean...
Yeah.
That's all. Sorry, that sounded really rude. What I meant was, they no longer can work with the Warrens.
Yeah.
Maybe the estate of the Warrens, but not...
Yeah.
Never mind, I'll shut up.
No, you're fine. So I just have a couple more things. So after the 1920s, spiritualism split into a few different directions. So one kind of blended spiritualism with other religious beliefs and practices and just became its own new age thing. One focused on spiritualist art, and that was like all it said, and I don't know what that means. And then one created actual spiritualist churches, which there are some in existence today, which is what that San Diego Tribune article was about, was a modern spiritualist church where you can go and attend and have a seance performed by someone who's ordained within that church. It's not a big thing anymore, obviously, but yeah, this is still, like, in existence today, just at the rate of, like, 2,500 followers in the entire country versus 8 million. You know what I mean? It's a lot smaller. And so, like, just tiny bit more just for today, like, the overwhelming amount of frauds in the field contributed to the decline in spiritualism, plus there were all those cultural shifts, especially after the 20s. But despite this, its influence can still be seen today, and this is from that History Is Now journal article thing. Everything from haunted houses to Ouija boards to the psychic hotline can be attributed to the rise of spiritualism in the 19th century. And that is all I have on spiritualism. I'm sure we could have done more,
right.
But...
You know.
Oh, man.
And if you're listening to this, please leave Charles Dickens alone.
Please leave Charles Dickens alone, yes.
Nah.
Put your Ouija board away. I know what you were about to do.
Oh, man. Okay, do we have any last comments or questions? I just tried to do, like, a broad overview. There were... Like, I could have done... What?
I was going to say, can someone make a supercuts of The Awakening that cuts out all the scary parts for Shannon? It's a really good movie.
It is, and...
I'll take your word for it.
She would like it.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Then our ending is that we have no ending, and long live the Emperor. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo.
If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.